Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert, and this is the show where I basically help you in your career. I help you to get a job, to discover new jobs, pass interviews, all that kind of stuff, and achieve success. And hopefully you can see me and hear me okay. We're back. We're back for the weekly live stream that we do. Special thanks to all my channel members, my Patreons, my super thanks donors, and all my participants. So thank you for being here if you're seeing this right now. And if you are seeing this right now, you should see a chat box somewhere in the vicinity of my face. Get in the chat and let me know what you're struggling with, what you're wondering about. The title of this episode is Being an Introvert is Not a Weakness. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're also going to be, but first we're going to be talking about another topic, which is the most important thing to say in a job interview that will get you the job. Okay, so we're going to be covering both of those today, and then we're going to be opening it up to questions. But as usual, if you are in a hurry and you're impatient and you want me to immediately answer your question, send a super chat, and that will cut through everything, and I will give you an immediate answer. Okay, so let's dive into this. We're going to cover the most important thing to say in a job interview that gets you hired. And let me explain. The answer to that is to basically say that you want the job. Okay? That's what you have to say. That carries so much sway with interviewers, whether they're a recruiter or they're a hiring manager. These are the magic words, but there's a couple of caveats here. There's a couple of footnotes. You have to be able to say it in a way that they believe you, right? It doesn't sound like an act, right? And the other big thing is that a lot of people misinterpret what the whole point of this is. It doesn't mean that you want a job because you need the money. What it means is you want this job specifically. Okay? Yes, you're looking for a job, but you want this job specifically, right? See, one of the things about job interviews, which is counterintuitive, is that they are not really looking for your technical skills. They're not evaluating you on your technical skills. That's what they did during the resume phase, the application phase, right? They put all the candidates together and they pulled out the resumes where they felt that on paper, these candidates were qualified, okay? So they've already compared all the candidates on their technical skills. And it's counterintuitive because what do they always talk about when they get in a job interview? What do they ask you questions about? Whether it's a recruiter or whether it's a hiring manager, they'll ask you questions about your qualifications, right? That's the obvious thing. But those questions and the content of what they're asking and what you say, it's only a placeholder. What they're really trying to evaluate you on is who you are as a person. And what that means is your soft skills, how likable you are, how professional you are, what your attitude is. Can they work with you as a person? Do you seem legitimate, or does it seem like everything on your resume was a lie, right? Those are the things they're really trying to evaluate you on. So they need content, they need subject matter to talk about on the surface while they assess you on these more important areas, your soft skills, okay? So that's what the interview is all about. Now, one of the more important things that they're looking for when it comes to who you are as a person is they're looking for, they're trying to determine if they were to hire you, would you be passionate about the job? Would you be enthusiastic about doing this job and working in this organization, right? That's really what they're trying to determine because let's face it, you could be the most technically qualified person in the world, but if you have no interest in doing the work, this job really isn't important to you. It's not really what you want to do. You'd much rather be somewhere else, right? It doesn't matter how technically qualified you are. You're not going to work out, right? So the great thing that you can do in a job interview is, wouldn't it be wonderful is if it were possible for you to insert explicitly the idea that you want this particular job, you're passionate about getting this job, and this one specifically, and they believed you. It didn't come across as, just something you say, something that was rehearsed, but something that was legitimate, right? Well, it's gold if you can do this right. Let me share a story with you. I've told this story before, but it's been several years since I did a video on this. I can't remember, over 10 years ago, I think, this happened to me. So I was flown to Toronto, Canada, to interview a CEO of a company for a job. They were interviewing me for a job. It was a job interview, essentially. And we went to a restaurant, and I met the CEO, and we were talking. And this was for a position working for them. And I was not the most obvious candidate, okay? Of the people that they talked to, I suspect I was probably the least accomplished of the people that they were actually speaking with. And other people had a lot more accomplishments and more experience than I did in like areas of sales and things which were important to this particular position. But I went to the interview and I met the CEO. It was a lady who, she was friendly enough, but she was very aloof. And we were talking. And towards the end of the interview, after we got all the obvious stuff out of the way, I had said something to the effect of, I'd said like, listen, I really want to say something. And I want it to come across very clear. Are you listening? And she said, yes. And I said, okay, I want this job. And then I explained why. I said, it would be a great opportunity for me. It would be a chance to combine a lot of the different, like the skills I have in a lot of different areas. They seem to all combine into this role. I can take advantage of my skills in all these different areas, all in one role. And it's very exciting for me. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity. So I want this job, and I'm really hoping that it will work out. And I got the job. I was pretty sure I was not going to get it. There were a lot of very talented people up for this, and they offered it to me. And I'm pretty damn sure that it's because I said what I said towards the end of the interview that basically put me over the edge where they selected me. So I speak from experience when I make this recommendation, and I've heard from a lot of other various independent sources that this is what's going on. And I know it's going on for when I've hired people. You could hire a lot of different people, but, a lot of candidates don't seem to be particularly specifically interested in this job. And that's what employers really, really want. Okay. Assuming you're legitimate, assuming your resume isn't a fabrication, assuming you have, all the required skills and you're half decent at communicating and you can get along with people. The big thing that they're looking for is passion. Will you be enthusiastic about this job? Will you want to do it? A lot of times when they say it's a fit, that's usually what they're talking about. Is this something that you enjoy doing and you want to do? So that's why I say what I say. That's why I make the recommendation. The most important thing you can say in a job interview that really helps push you over the edge is saying explicitly, I want this job, right? And having that be believable. You can back it up, you explain why, and it doesn't come across as fake or ingenuous or disingenuous. It's the real deal. Okay? Now, obviously, that there's a lot of things that go with this. If you say the words, but your body language is telling a different story, your body language shows that you're uncomfortable, maybe you look disinterested, but you say the words, then it won't really work. You've got to sort of convince someone that it's genuine. Okay, so that is, in my opinion, people had asked, what's the most important thing you can say in a job interview that will help you get the job? That's it. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, you want to say it in an inspired way, not in a desperate way, right? And it's because they're looking for passion. That's the number one thing. Now, trust me, I know that being enthusiastic and passionate is probably the last thing from how you feel when you go to a lot of job interviews. Usually when you go to job interviews, you're between jobs. So you feel about this tall, you feel out of your comfort zone, you feel, a lack of confidence about yourself, about your abilities. You might feel uncomfortable by the whole fact that you essentially have to sell yourself. You have to talk up what you can do and why you're a good employee and why they should pick you. It's probably the furthest thing from how you feel in that moment is to feel passionate and enthusiastic about something, right? Or confident. But yet, that would be the thing that goes over the best, right? So it's a little bit of an act sometimes, or you have to force yourself. This can be a challenge for introverts or people that, I'm not a psychologist, but I would say aren't as in touch with their emotions, like whatever that's called in legitimate terms. This may be a challenge for them. People who don't wear their emotions on their sleeves, they're very sort of stoic and, they give like a sort of neutral kind of facade, whatever you want to call it. It may be a big challenge for people like that. But if you can practice this, knowing what to say really helps, knowing how to articulate what you want to say, saying this is the deal and this is why, I just thought you would want to know that, can really go a long way. So it's something that you want to tack on to your preparation when you do job interviews, because this is explicitly what people are looking for. Okay, that's one of the two topics we're going to cover today. The next one is the title of this episode, which is Being an Introvert is Not a Weakness. I was starting to touch on this in my earlier live stream today, but this is something that is quite near and dear to my heart. I'm an introvert. I've been a technical introvert my whole life. And, my heart goes out to a lot of introverts out there. There's a lot of highly talented people out there that are reaping the advantages of being an introvert, and there are many, but are laboring under the disadvantages of being an introvert. And sometimes, something I've noticed over the course of my life, that's because introverts, it's not that they can't do the things that make them seem more like an extrovert, just they don't place any value on it, which is hurting them. So we're going to get into that. Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I know a lot of you guys, this may strike a chord with you, because I know that there's a lot of introverts on YouTube and a lot of technical people. And you're probably in the same boat that I was. But if you can master this stuff, it's like taking candy from a fool. Right? You've heard that expression? A baby and its money are soon parted. Take it from me. I know these things. Okay, so let's get into it. First of all, let's define the term introvert so everybody knows what the hell I'm talking about. The definition that I learned many, many years ago of the word introvert, and I'm using it in the sense of the Myers-Briggs type indicator. This is something that I think is still really good. It seems to have fallen from favor somewhat, but I have my own theories on that. It's because they sort of tacked a bunch of crap onto it that was a bunch of psychobabble BS, and obviously that stuff is not true. And so they dismissed the whole thing as being pseudoscience, which in my experience, it isn't. I've been up against this thing many times, but that's another matter. The definition of introvert in that sense that I'm using is someone who can do social interaction, but they don't enjoy it. It's an energy draining experience for them. So if you're an introvert, it doesn't mean that you can't be social. Doesn't mean that you can't do public speaking. Doesn't mean that you can't present. It doesn't mean that you can't have a conversation with somebody else. It doesn't mean that you can't participate in a meeting or a group activity or some kind. It just means that at the end of the day, those activities are an energy draining experience. It's not what you do for fun. It's something that you do because you feel you have to do it and you can do it, but it's not your idea of fun. And this is contrasted with an extrovert. The extrovert is the opposite. Someone who can do social interaction, just like an introvert can. The only difference is that they enjoy it. It's an energy charging experience for them. They find that being on their own is an energy draining experience. They get lonely, they get bored, they start to feel bad about themselves, they start to feel isolated from the rest of society, and they start to feel uncomfortable. Introverts love that. Introverts love being on their own. You want to read a book, you want to watch TV, you want to, I don't know, go on the computer or something, and you feel good. You feel like this is an energy charging experience. So that's the definitions I'm working with. An introvert is someone who can do social interaction, but it's an energy draining experience, right? I'm a near complete total introvert. I have been so my entire life. When I started out, I had very under average social skills, and I took a degree in engineering, and I was with a lot of people like me. And then I got out into the real world and started to interact with people in a sort of employment type situation. And over the years, gradually, little by little, I learned how to do social skills, how to do social interaction. Things that other people had grown up being taught how to do, and it became part of their personality. I never really got that for some reason, or I never really responded to it. So if you are in a similar situation, you can maybe understand. And had I learned this stuff sooner, my career would have taken off at least 10 years earlier than it actually did. So very, very important to learn. And the other thing that I learned about it was that this stuff is really not rocket science. It's really not hard to learn how to interact with somebody. It's really not hard to learn how to be likable to someone when you first meet them, right? When someone teaches you, okay, this is this principle, this is this principle, this is this other principle, you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And then you go and apply those, right? Okay. So now that we all know what an introvert is, and maybe you can identify somewhat with what I've been talking about, this might apply to you. Okay. Something else I've noticed out in the real world is that whether this is real or imagined, a lot of introverts are made to feel that being an introvert is a tremendous disadvantage. And I don't know if you've experienced this. You know, I'm not sure if this is something that's imagined or it's something that is real. Like extroverts, like I think what's real is that extroverts look down on introverts the same way that introverts look down on extroverts. Introverts think that, you know, these extroverts, they're just spending all their time flapping their gums and, you know, talking to each other while simultaneously not getting any work done, not being able to focus on anything. It's all just cosmetics, window dressing, and there's no substance there, right? And then they dismiss that and they look down on extroverts. Meanwhile, extroverts, they have this negative opinion of introverts, saying these are like loners. They're people that just don't get how the world works. You have to interact with people. Everything is based on interaction. You know, these people just seem to want to just go lock themselves in their bedroom and stay there forever and never come out. And, you know, it's off-putting and it's antisocial, right? They need to develop their social skills because, let me tell you, interacting with introverts is unpleasant and it's awkward and, you know, it's not enjoyable. They don't make you feel good about yourself. They make everything feel awkward and clunky when you try and interact with them, right? So I know that's true. That's the prevailing attitudes. Everybody tends to value the things that they have and the traits they themselves have. And everyone tends to look down on people that don't have those traits or those values or those things, right? This is a sort of bias we all have. I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know what that's called, but I know that's real. But something that I talk about a lot on this channel is job interviews. And one common theme of a lot of job interviews is that if you encounter a recruiter, usually you're encountering someone who's extroverted. After all, they've chosen to do as their career something that involves a lot of interacting with new people, right? They're interviewing people for jobs. They sit in job interviews every day, right? So the crux of what they do for a living is based on interpersonal communication. That's extrovert territory, right? To choose that and to want to do it and to enjoy doing it, you're an extrovert. So in the whole job interview thing, if you're an extrovert or an introvert, you tend to be interviewed for a job by an extrovert. And for extroverts, this is not an issue. You actually kind of can connect more with people like you. But if you're an introvert, it feels a lot of times like you're at a significant disadvantage. You're being judged by someone who doesn't place value on the things that you place value on. Instead, they tend to undervalue or dismiss things that you consider valuable. And their assessment of different things is completely different. Like, for example, they might ask you, what social activities do you enjoy doing? And, they're expecting you to say, oh, I love to do sports. I love to do fishing. I don't count fishing as a sport, by the way. I mean, if you count taking a 3-hour nap as sport, I don't think that qualifies. But, they think that team building exercises are like this fabulous thing that's very effective, right? For example, lots of introverts think the exact opposite, including myself. It has some limited value, but it's very off-putting to introverts. So the problem is if they ask you a question like that in a job interview, they're going to judge you if you say something like, oh, I don't really do any of that. Instead, I like to do this, and they're going to go, bad answer, right? You see, because they have a different value system to introverts. So I think it's not all in our heads. This is a real thing. And that if you're an introvert, you can be made to feel like that's a significant disadvantage when it really isn't. Okay. One thing that's really comforting for a lot of introverts to know is that if you look throughout history and you look at the people that have driven the world forward, they've invented things, they've innovated in some way, they've discovered new things. Who are those people? They're introverts, almost to a person, right? Who made all the great discoveries? Who are the innovators that really took things and popularized them? They're all introverts, because extroverts are off talking to everyone. Introverts are the type of people that can focus on something almost to an obsessive degree, which is kind of what's required to be a visionary or to imagine something that we don't already see, something that doesn't exist that could exist, right? These are introverts. They're the ones that actually move the world forward. So that's encouraging. It's encouraging knowing that. Doesn't necessarily help us all in our lives knowing that, but it's kind of comforting on some level to know that. Now, I've sung a lot of praises of introverts, okay? Let's get into some of the disadvantages of being an introvert that may strike a chord with you. You may have experienced some of these things, okay? One kind of fact of the business world, certainly, is that everything is based on interactions, right? You might have the illusion that things happen in isolation. Like let's say you have a technical type job and you work at your workstation or wherever you work, and you're alone in a room sometimes, and that's how you do your job. You process forms, you write code, you make decisions about things, right? Whether you're a civil lawyer doing contract law, or you're a developer, or you're an accountant, or you're some kind of administrator, you get the illusion that this is just solo work. because a lot of what's actually happening in the business world is obfuscated from you. You're a little piece of the puzzle, but you don't see the rest of the puzzle, right? Everything is based on interaction. Probably the easiest way to explain it is if you're in business selling something, all businesses sell something, right? You at least need customers, right? You have to connect with customers. You have to be able to communicate to them. You have to be able to persuade them in some way, shape, or form, and then interact with them, right? How else are they going to buy your thing? How else is a transaction going to take place, right? It's about connecting. And the more successful the business is, the more customers they will reach and convince and connect with and interact with, right? So hopefully everybody can understand that very basic principle. Now expand this principle to suppliers, to knowing what's going on out in their industry, what their competitors are doing, what new technology and innovation is happening. If you're aware of it and you understand it, that will gain you advantages and allow you to do more business, right? So the more you interact with the environment, with the business environment, all the players in your business, all the suppliers, all the vendors, all the regulators, all, the government, all the innovators, the customers, the more successful you will be, right? So hopefully you're with me so far. The more connections you have to other people, the better, right? Now, all of those people, you don't necessarily have to be locked in some kind of business relationship with them, right? Let's take suppliers. You don't just interact with people that, you have a partnership with. You're out there investigating what suppliers are out there, what precisely they do, what are their plans, what are they trying to do, what's their attitude towards this, what are, what type of people are they, what direction are they going in, etc. So gaining knowledge about all the other alternatives out there is very useful. That means that you don't just have to connect with people that you're doing business with, but all the other people out there too, so that you can make intelligent decisions about who to work with, because you know a lot of different people, a lot of different potential partners, right? So the more connections you have and the better quality of those relationships, the more advantages you will have, right? So that's another example of how connections, the more connections you have and the better quality connections, that will make you more successful. So everything is based on interaction. I could go on forever giving you all kinds of examples, but hopefully that makes sense, right? A lot of introverts, they don't place value on any of that. They just say, no, talking to people is a waste of time, especially if there's no tangible transaction or, purpose to it. But just talking to people for the sake of talking to people is useless. Incorrect. Now, certainly if you have real work to do, it makes more sense maybe to focus on the real work you have to do rather than that, which could be optional. But in the end, it's that kind of stuff that leads to success, right? Who gets promoted in businesses? If you get a job and then you want to get promoted, is it the hardest worker? Is it the most knowledgeable worker? Usually not. Sometimes it happens like that, but usually not. Usually it's the most connected worker, the person that has great relationships with a lot of people, and which something that's directly correlated to it is the person that is the most likable, right? Who you can have a conversation with and you go away from the conversation thinking, I actually enjoyed that. As opposed to walking away from the conversation thinking, I never want to see that person again. I hate their guts, right? So hopefully I've sold you on this idea. If you haven't sort of figured that out already, hopefully you can start to see the advantage of some of this activity, even though you're an introvert, even though you may not have placed value on this kind of activity before, And I remember being an engineer. I remember being in university for an engineer, in a past life, seems like 150 years ago. And I remember they would say stuff like this to further this introverted type thinking. They would say, like, it's all about substance. It's not about how popular you are. It's not about, all this other fluff. It's about who gets the right answer. And that's true, but that's an oversimplification. In the real world, you need both. You need the person who gets the right answer, plus the person that everyone wants to work with because they're awesome and who knows how to talk to people and make them feel good about themselves and is amenable to talking with other people and interacting with them. Imagine if you could do both, right? You had brains, you had talent, plus people love dealing with you. And they walk away from every interaction with you thinking, wow, that was great. I'd love to talk to that person again. Right? Wouldn't it be great if you could have both? Those are the people that end up really succeeding. This is why I'm doing this type of live stream, because I think that certainly I didn't know this when I was starting out. And I know a lot of other people that are not aware of this. Okay, so what extroverts miss? First of all, they miss the fact that every real accomplishment, certainly in the business world, depends on interaction. You got to have that interaction. So understanding how to interact people is rather important. At the end of the day, one way or another, it is important, okay? The other thing I think that a lot of introverts miss is that social skills are really not that hard to learn. Okay? They're really not. When people explain, the sort of protocol for how you interact with somebody, here's the first thing you do. Here's the second thing you do. Now remember this principle. For example, one principle is that if you're just meeting someone for the first time and you don't know them, it's not like, they're famous or something. They're just another person, right? Well, if that person starts telling you all about themselves, that's usually a big turnoff, right? People enjoy talking about themselves. They enjoy talking about things that they're interested in, that they know, that they've done. They love giving you their opinions on stuff, right? So if you're meeting somebody, a great thing to do is to ask them questions about things that you think that they will want to talk about. You ask them about them. You ask them from the mundane to the important. The mundane might be small talk. You say, did you have a lot of trouble getting through traffic today or something like that? If you know that they drove to this place, they'll be happy to tell you, I've been here many times before and it usually takes me about an hour, but today the traffic was really, really easy or really light or something. They'll enjoy saying that stuff. As opposed to you going up to them and volunteering how much of an ordeal you had to get there, right? They won't care. They don't know you. They don't care about your opinion on it and everything under the sun, right? They're only listening to be polite. So just little principles like this, right? Social skills are not that hard to learn. If you're like me and you never had these really taught to you, properly, maybe go back and try and learn some of these and incorporate them. It's not that you can't talk. A lot of times that you just don't know what to say, or you choose maybe the thing to say that isn't the best, right? It seems to be other people seem to be bored or annoyed or they feel awkward or, whatever, right? You need knowledge and then you need practice. So if you know how to have a conversation or what to say, that's great. Now go out and practice it. Next time you meet a friend of yours that you would normally meet anyway, start applying some of these principles. See if it goes over even better than usual. Next time you got to go talk to a teacher or a boss or a coworker or, some long lost family member, start applying some of these principles. Same with the body language. I think it took me till age 30 to realize that you should look people in the eye when you talk to them. I don't know. I think I was way behind the curve on this, but, certainly in Western society, you look people in the eye, you don't have a mesmerizing kind of hypnotizing kind of gaze, but you basically look them in the eye. We occasionally look away, but just doing stuff like that. And this will help the other person feel like you're more interested in what they have to say. You're more engaged, and you're a little harder to ignore, So just little rules like this. You need the knowledge, and then you go out and practice it. And you do this for a couple of years, you're going to be a pro. You're going to learn this stuff. And you'll be amazed at what a difference it makes in your interactions with other people. Incidentally, by the way, if you're looking to learn the knowledge with me, right, I have a lot of that in this course right here, because a big component of that course is how to network, how to discover jobs through networking, and then how to interact with people. So I do teach a lot of the principles here if you want to take that with me. If you're wanting to learn this stuff and you just want it all in one place, get that course. A lot of people have taken it, and it solved a lot of problems for people. So I just want to plug that while I'm here, because it is relevant. Okay. So yeah, I highly encourage everyone, if you could tack on these skills, you will do a lot better in job interviews. You will do a lot better in business. You will do a lot better in life. You will open up a lot of opportunities for yourself. A lot of times people get the job not because they're smarter than everybody else, but because they're the one that showed up, right? And that way they get that opportunity. Nobody else showed up. Right? Like a lot of jobs. You might have applied through standard channels. Your application went in with 500 other people, right? But of the 500 people that applied for the job, how many showed up to talk to the hiring manager? Maybe one person did. So that person immediately jumps up to the top of the pile. Why? Because first of all, the act of showing up for it, that demonstrates that they're passionate about that job. They care about that job. You're not going to go to all the effort to show up and meet someone if it's a job you don't care about, right? So they're demonstrating that they care about that. Then, of the 500 applicants, 499 of them are a name on a piece of paper, and one of them is a real human being that the hiring manager has actually met. So the hiring manager got a free sample of what that applicant is like, what they're like to interact with, how good are their communication skills, how likable are they, do they have the right attitude, do they dress and present themselves professionally, do they look like they belong there? They already know that stuff about that one person who showed up. All the others, they don't know any of that. So the person who showed up already has elevated themselves above the crowd by the very act of showing up. Right? And if that person who showed up wowed the person with their professionalism and their communication skills, that's a double win. Right? So this is the effect that some of this stuff has, okay? There are many, many ways you can use this in your life to get a job or to open up other opportunities, but that's one of like many, many different ways, different examples. So hopefully this is getting through to some people out there, and this has piqued your interest, and hopefully I feel that my job is done if you have developed a respect for this, and if you're an introvert, you now have a desire to tack on some social skills because you see their importance. Okay, let's go over to questions. Okay, let's see here. Jade is here. Yeah, welcome to Jade. So is Amor. Hello, Amor. Rodolfo says, I'm an introvert and I guess I fully qualify for the definition. It has taken me years and discipline to overcome it. Yeah, it's a long journey, isn't it, Rodolfo? Armor says, Armor. you got to write amor and then put a tank just to keep people guessing. It's all about trust, very selective with whom I socialize. Yes, and I am exactly the same way. Usually, and that's no coincidence. Usually introverts, as I understand it, as I'm given to understand, introverts have a small number of friends that they go in depth with. Like they're good friends. They tend to focus on those friends and they go deep. They're not just like fleeting relationships, surface relationships. You know, they go much more deep than extroverts, but there's only a small number of them. Amor says, "You are correct, sir. Thank you. Networking and being likable brings success in the workplace." Definitely will. It's so stupid, isn't it? Like you would think that like technical knowledge and ability would be by far the number one thing and everything else would be trivial. But that's not what we see. You see, especially when you're getting a job, because the attitude of employers, rightly or wrongly, is that people with technical skills are a dime a dozen. Like you can always find people that have the skill. It's very rare that finding a qualified person is the real challenge. Most jobs, you know, they have lots of candidates, and on paper, there's many candidates for each of those jobs that would qualify. The only question really is, you know, how are they to work with? Are they dedicated? Are they reliable? You know, does it make sense to pay them that amount of money to do that job? Because if they're really super talented, you know, and the reality is that they can make a lot more money working somewhere else in a more advanced job, then it doesn't make sense to hire them. So you want to get to know them. You can't determine this by looking at their paper qualifications a lot of times, right? So it really comes down to how you are as a person, and how you are as a person really ends up being the deciding factor in a lot of things, not just getting a job, but a lot of things. Rodolfo says, as an introvert, I tend to see little details that others miss. I take time to figure things out, and I'm a troubleshooter, but I love flying under the radar. Yes, well, those are all technical introverted traits. I mean, I share a lot of those too. I go real into. One of the advantages I had in my corporate career was, you know, let's say there's some kind of argument or dispute, or, you know, you're proposing something and other people are proposing an alternative and you're trying to compete for who's going to win out. My advantage was I'd always have all the ducks in a row, all the paper trail, all the details. It would take me a hell of a lot of time, but I've done my homework, put it that way. And that way you could shut down many different arguments. You could answer any kind of accusation or point of contention because you had everything documented, you had everything searchable, discoverable, and you could have an answer to everything. Almost like what makes a good lawyer, you know, in a trial. So the opposing counsel makes an argument, and that's fine because, bam, I got the facts right here. On this date, this happened. On that date, that happened. On this date, that happened. So shut down, right? That was my advantage. And I've discovered a long time ago that's not something that's unique to me. Those are general introverted traits. That's why introverts make good, like, contract lawyers and accountants and things, right? That attention to detail, that obsessive sort of insistence on organization and detail can be a real advantage if you use it right. So I'm kind of with you, Rodolfo. You know, you and me are like that. Okay. Prashanth says, Prashanth from India, I'm listening. Well, it's good to have you here, Prashanth. Tuna says, hello, my team leader kept asking me to talk to other people outside of job topics, but I don't like that. Do you think, does it affect my career? Well, I mean, that's a very general, I don't know what situation you're in. Why do they want you to talk to people? Like, are you talking about talking to your other team members in a work environment, but like making small talk, like talking about the news and what you're going to do on the weekend, like socializing, is that what you're kind of talking about? That can help. That can help. Now, I believe I understand the issue here, because on the surface, it sounds like that's a waste of time. If I talk to my coworker about non-work related things, how is that productive, right? To an introvert or a technically minded person, it may seem like, well, that's not productive, right? There's no purpose in doing this. It's wasted time. It's a distraction. However, there's an indirect benefit, or it can be if I'm understanding your situation correctly. And that is that if there's, let's say you're in a team of people at work that all have to collaborate to do a project or something, there's invariably tensions and disagreements that occur within that team. Now, what can be a great equalizer, a diffuser of tension, to get people to just sort of chill out and stay friends and keep wanting to work together, is you talk about something outside of work. You talk about sports. You talk about the news, like recent things that have happened in the news. You discover that you have similar opinions on those things, like sports and politics and whatever, just hobbies, whatever. And you go, oh, okay, so you're my friend now. We talked, maybe we told a joke and everybody laughed and we're having a good time. Now we can get back to working together. And because we're all good friends, we can easily get past this little disagreement that maybe before would have been a real wedge in our process at work. But because, hey, me and this other person are good buddies, we agreed on a simple compromise. We're both happy. I respect them. I trust them. And they trust and respect me. And, we're both okay with this. So we just move forward, right? So you see, it can have an indirect benefit if you do it right. Obviously, just shooting the shit about sports all day is not productive. If that's all you do, then obviously that would be bad, right? Mike says, reminds me of an old saying, if you want people to be interested in you, you have to be interested in them. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's kind of a bit of an oversimplification, but yeah. Remember, the goal might not necessarily for them to be interested in you, depending on how you interpret that, right? Like, if you have a specific purpose to an interaction, but you don't know the person, you want them to grant your request or agree to what you're proposing. Maybe you don't necessarily need them to be interested in you, but you want them to go along with what you're proposing, even if it's only in their own self-interest, right? So, but that might be beside the point you're making. Ricardo says, newcomer looking into all of this. Yeah. Like I said earlier, if you're an introvert, especially a technically minded introvert, and we're talking about the context of careers and success in other areas of life, developing your social skills really, really helps, right? It feels like a handicap when you're not very good socially, but on top of it, you don't place any value on it. So you therefore don't improve yourself. Therefore, it will continue to hold you back your entire life. And the other thing is that when people are in their 20s, like speaking as like a late middle-aged person here, people in their 20s, you assume that they don't have amazing social skills. That's just an assumption older people make, and you make allowances for it. But a middle-aged person that doesn't have social skills, you're less forgiving of that. The idea is that like, well, you should have learned it by now kind of thing. Almost like a little child, if they act like a brat and they're not very polite, to a degree, you can forgive that because of their age. But, when an older person behaves like a child, then you're less forgiving of it, right? It's the same kind of idea. So that's why if you get to later on in your career and you haven't really developed a lot of your social skills or your likability, that's when you might be up against bosses who regard you as a non-starter to be promoted into a management position, for example, or anything like that, like they start to regard you as, you're not suitable for any of the opportunities that might be available, right? So that's another reason to to want to do this. How do you say that? Dragon says, I also like to fly under the radar, but I have found that it is important to talk with coworkers and managers about what I'm doing as I do it, not just the completed work. My raise is improved. Yes, of course. That's a great example. So rather than just, get an assignment from your boss and then you go off and you work by yourself, sometimes for a long time, and then come back and present the final thing, as I'm sure everybody could appreciate, what would be a better way of doing it is as you're working on your thing by yourself, you're checking in repeatedly. Maybe not in a super formal way, but just, sort of like, just take like 30 seconds here or there to say, hey, here's what I got so far on that project. Is this kind of what you were looking for? And then that gives the boss an opportunity to give you feedback and say, yeah, but I don't need that quite that much detail. Maybe focus more on this. And you're like, okay, check. You know what I'm saying? You'll get a much better result that meets their expectations at the end of the day. So that's a great example, right? Of like little social interactions. You know exactly what to say, when, how to read their mood. This is a good time. This is not a good time. Right? Like just that will help you. You learn a lot of that stuff by practice. Okay. Ricardo says, being an introvert is not a weakness for certain positions only. Also, it is a weakness. What? Also, it is a weakness because it gives a false idea of ignorance and lack of proper training. Okay. Well, it's a strength and a weakness. Same with being an extrovert. They're both strengths and weaknesses. It's just what I'm advocating is that people try and recognize it as a strength, because it is, but also tack on some of the simple things that extroverts do that give them such an advantage in certain areas, right? So that you can go head to head with them and win. And, let's face it, you will be able to win in certain areas because you have an attention to detail that maybe a lot of extroverts don't. So if you can just match their social ability, which is really not that hard to do, then you have every advantage. You're not operating at any kind of handicap. Also, it helps your self-confidence when you see yourself doing this. When you have an interaction with your boss and your boss responds very favorably to you, right? It feels like, yeah, doing pretty good. You can't tap the shoulder with the same arm. You have to do this, right? And I know I do this for at least 4 or 5 hours a day. Tuna says, thank you for the detailed answer despite my unclear question. Hey, all questions are unclear to varying degrees, and you're doing a fantastic job, Tuna, and you're here and you're interacting with me, so you're okay in my book. Rodolfo says, little things that have helped me. I go out of my way to get along with everybody, and I try to get to know them. Some clues the person will share with you can be topics for future conversations. Yeah. Now, look, if that's what you're doing, who am I to judge, right? All I know is that I have issues doing what you're saying here. One of my problems is that, truth be told, I'm just not interested in a lot of details of a lot of people's lives who I barely know. So that's kind of the first thing. The other thing is that I don't remember the details of their lives because I'm not interested in them. You know what I mean? This, I think, I'm not sure if that's just me or that's a trait that all introverts share. Because we're not tuned into social interaction, we're not that interested in other people, like in the mundane details of their lives. We're not that interested. That can be a challenge, maybe, for some people. But one thing is for sure, and that is that if you're interacting with somebody, you want them to enjoy interacting with you, and you would like to enjoy interacting with them. And you would like to both go away from that interaction thinking like, hey, that was easy, that was fun, and I like that other person, and I welcome interacting with them again, right? My personal take is that's what I've tried to achieve in all my personal interactions. I know my own limitations, and that is that unfortunately I just don't have the memory to be able to remember subtle details of what someone said about their family like a month ago to you. I just don't remember. It can come across as like as a bad thing, so I try to compensate for it. Rodolfo continues, says, more recently, I make an effort to greet a coworker with a light smile. It helps to break the ice and tension. Yeah, great point. I mean, this is one of the things you learn, like one of the principles. If you just look like, sullen or angry, like you kind of look at people like this, you're not very approachable. And what I've noticed is that a lot of people, they put off these vibes. They have like a very kind of intense, sullen, serious facial expression. And what that does is it makes you less approachable. People don't want to go up and talk to you when you look like that. If you look approachable and, you could say light smile, like is the term you used, but just looking cheerful, pleasant, like, you're not upset about something, you're not nervous, you're not annoyed. Just looking like that will help, right? One thing that I've noticed on LinkedIn, I don't know if you guys have been on LinkedIn and you see other people's profiles and you can see their profile picture, right? And the general rule is that you want to look approachable and reasonably friendly in a profile picture. If you look at executives, generally they try and smile, they try and look really happy and cheery, right? And the whole purpose of that is because they want to look approachable. They want to look like there's somebody I think I could talk to, right? Now, regardless of the reality that you may have experienced, that's what the theory is, okay? So that's the idea. I've seen some people with like LinkedIn profile pictures and they just look intense. They look like really angry. They look like, they got like a real problem with someone or everyone or themselves, and I've seen a couple of pictures that are just downright scary. So, it starts with looking cheery, even though you might not be feeling cheery, right? Now, some people will write that off as fake. You're fake. Other people will write that off as being professional, right? Just because you've had a bad day, but one of your subordinates has to come and give you a report and they're walking up to you and you're like, like looking like this to them. I mean, good things will not happen if that's kind of how you carry yourself, right? So it starts with little things like that. Think of a job interview. You go in there, you sit down before you even said a word. You're looking extremely nervous and extremely pissed off, right? Do you think that anything that comes out of your mouth afterwards will make them see you as like, oh, we got to hire that person, right? It's stupid, but it's true. This stuff is all important, unfortunately. It should be, but it is, because in that case, they don't know you. They don't know how wonderful you are. They're getting a first impression, and the only thing that they know about you is that you look really pissed off and you look really nervous. And that's not what they want in the person that they're going to have to work with, right? Doesn't matter how wonderful you are, doing your job. If they got to deal with that every day, it's a deal breaker, right? So this stuff is a lot more important than a lot of introverts think it is. Naldo says, do you think the unnatural behavior of an introvert to put real effort to socialize can be picked up as inauthentic, and that sense from the other person creates exhaustion in the introvert. Absolutely. Yes, you are right. You see, what I should do is I should show up to these live streams in my pajamas and not groom myself in any way, and drop F-bombs when I feel like dropping F-bombs, and that would be authentic. I'm serious. That would be authentic. But being authentic takes a back seat to being professional, being likable, and being able to interact with other people, right? If you were truly authentic, Naldo, if you don't like your job, why the hell are you showing up for it every day, right? Doesn't it feel fake doing that? Of course it does. But we do it because we have to interact with others to succeed, right? So maybe you don't feel like talking to a person right now, maybe a coworker, but they're asking you to assist them now, right? And so the professional thing is not to bite their head off and be authentic and tell them to piss off because you really don't feel like talking to them now. The professional thing to do would be to try and look approachable and help them anyway, even though you might not really be feeling it right now, right? So what I'm trying to say is being authentic, depending on what precisely we're talking about, is not this all-important thing that people should prioritize above everything else in every situation. Obviously, there's going to be some situations where, like, if it's an ethical matter, then yes, absolutely. But like in your day-to-day interaction with people, oh no, if something feels awkward, then I shouldn't do it. That's not necessarily the best policy, right? But listen, who am I to judge? If you firmly believe that that should be the number one thing in all situations, all the time, follow your bliss and and see how it works out for you. Like if anyone's ever worked as a manager, that first, one of the things you get as a manager is you get your subordinates coming to you. They're coming to you with questions, coming to you with issues. They're reporting back to you. And depending on the situation, it can be quite overwhelming. You might have just been chewed out by your boss, and you come back to your office or whatever, and you've got like 3 people that are, they're bringing you problems, they're bringing you issues, they're bringing you, like all these questions that you consider like kind of silly, don't you know this by now, kind of thing. But the important thing is that you don't bite their head off and keep it real, be authentic, is that you put on a professional face and you answer their question and you listen to their issue and, you deal with things professionally. So as you go higher and higher, what you find is that, generally speaking, is that you can keep it real in a professional situation less and less. And the more you do keep it real, the more things do not go well for you. I don't mean that in a slimy and authentic way. I mean in a professional way, right? Yes, it's hard to step outside your comfort zone and do something that you traditionally might not have been comfortable with. But you know what? Learning anything in life is hard. When they forced you to go to school when you were 6 years old, I'm sure that didn't feel great all the time, but you emerge all the better for it, and this is another thing like that, where you push yourself a little bit outside your comfort zone. What I'm here to tell you is that you don't have to push yourself far outside your comfort zone, just a little. You learn the theory, some little limited kind of interaction, and then you go out and practice it, right? That's what I'm trying to advocate for here. So you're right, but those things shouldn't matter within the larger context of improving ourselves and giving other people a better experience interacting with you. Now you see, there's a problem. Naldo, okay, you're using the term, Okay, Naldo says, because I think most introverts know what to do, but it does feel exhausting to play the game. Yeah, you know what's exhausting? Going to work every day. You know what I'm saying? And using the expression play the game, just so you know, you're signaling to me that you don't have respect for it. That's fine. You don't have to have respect for it. I'm just saying is that you may not have picked up on that. By using that term, that's what you're signaling to me. You might have, what that really means is not play the game, but this BS you're talking about. That would be another synonym for that term. And, you're not placing value on it, obviously. So until you actually place value on it, you won't be doing it, and you won't be reaping any of the advantages for it. Now, maybe you never place value on it. Maybe you never get there. That's fine. Who am I to judge? Some people don't need to. I've worked with some real... I started my career working with blue-collar people who were like middle-aged, welders, pipe fitters, industrial mechanics. These people they had absolutely no respect for social interaction, the vast majority of them. And I get it. I get it, because the people that were trying to do this stuff were all a bunch of jackasses in that world, right? So they formed this opinion that, if you actually start caring about this stuff and trying to do it right, then you must be a jackass too. Incorrect. It's just called being nice and caring about others and being okay to help them, even though you don't feel like it. Right? That's the way I would look at it. But I totally understand where you're coming from, Naldo. That's where I came from. I came from thinking a lot worse than that, being in that environment that I just described. YS says, I changed my job 5 months ago, but the new job is not what I expected it to be. Is it possible to get back to the same job I left? Usually not. Sometimes it is, but the general rule is that it isn't. The reason why is because you've shown your true colors by leaving, right? And that can, like your original employer, to them, it may feel to them like you've shown your true colors. You feel you can do better than work here. So, okay, no problem. Good luck to you. But then if you come sort of crawling back, they'd be like, well, yeah, but you're the guy that left. You've shown that your loyalties do not lie with us. So if you've left before, you'll probably leave again the next time something better comes along. So that doesn't count in your favor, right? That's the impression it gives. Now, there's a lot of people who have left and come back. And the reason they come back is because the advantages you have is that you're a known quantity. They know you, you know the job inside out. So that's a lot more efficient getting you than training some new person from scratch, and a lot less risky, right? In terms of getting a technically qualified candidate. So that can sometimes counterbalance the negatives, right? But the general rule is that it's hard to come back, but not impossible. So if that's really what you want to do, there's no reason at all why you can't try for that or push for that. You might just have to go cap in hand and sing them a few praises and this kind of thing to make them feel good about it. And then they'll say, okay, sure. Mike, I've found that it takes time for an introvert to trust. If you try to be their best friend right away, they don't like that. You have to earn their trust. Who's trying to be someone's best friend? I wouldn't trust anyone who tries to be my best friend when I've just met them. To me, that's a hell of a red flag. Yeah, you're not trying to be anyone's best friend. You're just trying to be positive and friendly when they interact with you, even if you don't know them at all, right? That's the approach that I'd recommend with people. Like I deal with, especially when I was in my corporate career, I was dealing with a lot of people on a regular basis that I don't know. And, I wasn't trying to be their best friend, but I was trying to be very approachable, friendly, receptive to them, and respectful. Like when they come and interact with me, I give them my complete attention. I take what they say seriously. I try to get along really well with them. in this kind of thing. I'm not trying to be their best friend. I'm just trying to have a positive interaction. That's what I think. That's how I think people should do it. Like, for example, if I know someone has a hobby, they're into, I don't know, comic books or toys from the 80s. I don't know. I'll ask them about it and say, like, I hear you're into this. Like, something I've always wondered about that is like this, how does that work? Can you get those comic books anymore, or toys from the 80s? Doesn't that cost you like thousands of dollars? Do they still make them? Do they reissue? I'll engage them and stuff like that. I'm not trying to fool them into thinking that, I'm their best friend about it, but I'll ask them about something because I know it's important to them, and I'll listen to the answer and I'll take it seriously, and I might learn something. I'm open to learning something about it. Right? There's a difference between, like, there's no ulterior motive. I'm not trying to pull the wool over their eyes. I'm not trying to make them think that, I'm something I'm not, like I'm their best friend. I'm not, but I'm friendly, and, I'm open to learning about something, and I know that they're into it. So, and I want to show them respect. So it's a little bit different. I mean, it's not like you're not trying to do anything oily or slimy or unscrupulous. You're just trying to be friendly. Now, I know what you're talking about. I think there's a lot of people that will say stuff like that. They'll ask you questions about, oh, I hear you're into comic books. And then they don't give a crap about comic books and about what you have to say. And then you start talking about, and they go, yeah. Okay. So anyway, I need that report on my desk tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Like, it feels bad. And that's not the way to do it, right? You know what I mean? They want to get their way, but they're unwilling to give anything. They won't give you a minute of their time. You know what I'm saying? Like, unfortunately, we have a lot of people like that in this world that think that I'll just go through the motions of being friendly, but I won't actually be friendly. I'll ask you about your day, but then cut you off, not listen to anything you're saying, and then say my thing. Like that. That's not what I'm advocating for. I'm advocating for actually being friendly and realizing that if you want people to be friendly to you, you have to start with that, right? YS says, it's totally not what I want to do. Is it possible to go back? Yeah, then don't go back. Or the new job is not what you want to do. Okay, listen, you have a couple of options here. If I'm assuming you've already figured out one of the options, which is you leave, right? Another option might be to get your ducks in a row, figure out what, if it's not going to work here, what are you going to do as an alternative? Maybe put out some feelers to your previous job, look for other things. But then you could try and salvage the situation by going to your current boss and saying, like, look, like, here's an example of an interaction, and say, I have to confess, like, when I put in for this job and when you guys were gracious enough to offer it to me, I felt that the job was something different. I felt that I was going to be doing this type of activity and that type of activity, and that's not really what's happening here. And this is a big deal to me. And I was wondering, is it possible to be moved to these other job duties that I felt that's what was discussed and what I was under the impression that this job consisted of? Is that possible to do? Because this is kind of a big issue for me, something like that. It may be possible to salvage a situation where you have a productive and friendly discussion about that, but yet you communicate that it is a big deal for you and kind of, is not something that they should dismiss out of hand, because if they do it, it's going to be a big issue for you. So it might be possible to do that. I would try that at least before you just out of the blue give your notice. But if you do decide to go down that route, make sure that you've done what's right for you. You've got all your ducks in a row. You have other things lined up so that if the boss says, no, sorry, and, oh, I can tell that you're not happy in this job. So, we're going to lay you off or something. You have other things lined up, right? I would only do this if you're adamant on leaving. It's never going to work. You're not even for 6 months or a year. You know what I'm saying? Because if you stick it out for a year, sometimes you can push to be moved into a different role. Sometimes that's possible after you sort of get over the 6 month to 1 year hurdle where now they know you, they trust you a bit more, they know you're a good worker. So that might be an option too, depending on the situation you're in. Naldo says, I see your view. It's true in a work environment. It is important to somewhat detach from just how you feel and put that professional face. Yeah, unfortunately, that's something that we all have to do on occasion. Crichton says, I'm waiting on an interview date for that community college adjunct professor position that popped up last week. Oh, yeah, okay, I remember that. I have a feeling that they'll wait till the last minute for some illogical reason. Okay, well, hopefully they come through with that. Naldo says, it doesn't have to be inauthentic or a game played if you have an interest in that work. I think I have that feeling because of the convoluted hiring process and how you have to showcase yourself to get it. Thank you for this content. We need more people sharing this insight. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's the thing. There's a difference between being professional and being fake. And this is the thing about introverts. When I talk about being professional and being friendly, all of a sudden a light bulb goes off, like a big red light bulb goes off in their minds and say, oh, he's talking about being fake. It's like, no, I'm not talking about being fake. I'm talking about being professional and approachable. The thing is that you yourself behave the way that humans all behave. We're primarily interested in ourselves. We place slightly more value on the traits and things that we have as opposed to the traits and things that others have, the maybe we don't have, right? We're very self-centered. And you know what I'm saying? Like when you have a conversation with somebody, instead of just talking all about yourself, right? Which is what you would like to do because you yourself are self-centered, as am I, as everyone, right? What might be a smarter thing to do would be to ask the other person questions about them. And do you realize how flattering it is for someone to ask you, hey, I'm really interested in your opinion on this. What do you think of this thing that you do or that you know about that I don't? How often do you get that? How often does someone come up to you and say, hey, this thing that you do, that you know all about, I think that's incredibly fascinating. I would just love to listen to you talk about how this thing works. Dude, teach me, How often do you get that? And if you felt it was genuine, how would you feel if someone said that to you? You'd probably love it. You'd be like, a kindred spirit, someone who's actually interested in this thing that I do. Wow, that's incredible. And you would enjoy talking all about it, right? So how would you feel about that person? You'd probably like them, right? Now imagine if you went up to, I don't know, some person that you felt was kind of like above you in some way. You talk to a CEO or something. I don't know. Whoever it is that you look up to, that you place value on, and you did that to them. And all of a sudden they really liked you. And, it's not inauthentic to say, hey, I'm really interested in learning what your opinions are about business or this industry or, this thing that you guys do, because you maybe genuinely are interested in wanting to learn how that works and what they do and get some insights into it. So it's like a win-win. They love you and then they talk all about it and then you get to learn, right? So it's just principles like these that can really open up a lot of doors, for people, right? It's not an act. It's not fake. It's just that you're choosing to have the conversation that way rather than going up to somebody, having it be all awkward, not knowing what to say, and then end up talking about yourself. Hi, you don't know me, but this is my name, and this is where I live, and this is what I do, and this is what I think. And they're thinking like, who cares? Like, why are we talking? Anyway, I love conversations that just end abruptly. I get on some meandering thing and then I just end it. That's always wonderful. Where did I leave off here? Naldo doesn't have to be on authentic. Yeah, I think I did that, right? Amor says kindness goes a long way. Yeah. How often do you get kindness in the workplace? Not very often, right? Especially with introverts. Introverts think it's beneath them. That's their problem, so they don't do it. And then extroverts do it, but they do it a lot of times in a fake way, which is like, I don't know which one's worse, right? But how often do you get like genuine kindness? Like, I genuinely care about you and I'm going to try and help you. I'm in the middle of work, but you come up to me and you try to get me to talk to you or do something for you. I'm genuinely going to engage, right? How often do you get that? Not a lot. Thank you for your time and insight. Have a wonderful day. Yes. Thank you, Amor. My good friend Tuna says, I really wonder how recruiters approach undergraduate interns, especially in engineering fields. I have worked for a global company for 10 months and had good feedback, ended up unemployed. Okay. So what role are you in? So you're an undergraduate in engineering. You worked 10 months, but ended up unemployed. So this was because it was an internship. Then the internship ended after 10 months. Is that what you're saying? Listen, one thing you got to make sure that you're doing in the whole job search thing, regardless of whether it's an internship or it's a job interview or whatever, is always remember that if you don't get accepted, if they don't hire you, that's not a reflection on how good you are, okay? Now, I know that sounds kind of clunky and weird and self-evident, but I mean, I'm speaking from the perspective of an employer, okay? Sometimes there just isn't a job. So like, for example, the internship, there just wasn't a position. They would have liked to hire you. Your boss would have loved to keep you on, but they just they weren't given that option from the people above them to approve budgets and approve the number of people in each department, right? It just wasn't possible. And it's not a reflection on like, oh, you were no good, so they didn't hire you. That's the wrong conclusion, right? Same with the job interview. For pretty much every job that's out there, the interviewers will talk to more than one qualified candidate. It won't just be one candidate that this person we want, all the rest we don't want. That's not how it works. They could talk to 6, fully qualified candidates, and they can only hire one. They would have loved to hire the other 5. They genuinely felt that the other 5 would have brought something real to their organization, their operation. Unfortunately, they could only hire one person, so they had to choose. Sometimes it comes down to almost the throw of the dice. It's almost random who they hire because they're all qualified and they all seem just as promising. But why was somebody else hired and not you? It's not a reflection on you, right? Now, yes, okay, if you choose not to prepare, you choose not to take the interview seriously, you choose not to take the job application seriously, and you have a negative attitude towards the whole thing, of course, yes, it might be a reflection on you. But you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people just jump to the conclusion that I'm no good. That's why I was rejected. That's not what's happening at all. It's a numbers game. Introverts generally don't tend to be in sales, right? But if you were someone that comes from sales, you would see this, okay? You would, because you see it all the time. A salesperson, let's say they're doing personal selling, like, maybe they're something ridiculously cliched, like going door to door to sell something, right? Most people will say no, right? Maybe 5% of people, of the doors they knock on, will buy their product, okay? So you get rejected 95% of the time. Does that make the salesperson go away thinking, oh, my product's no good, I'm no good, and I should just give it up? No, they say, okay, I see what's going on here. I've got a 95% success rate, or a 5% success rate. That means if I want 5 sales, I knock on 100 doors. That means if I want 50 sales by the end of the week, I got to knock on 1,000 doors, right? If I want, 500 sales at the end of the year, I've got to knock on 10,000 doors, right? So no problem. My goal is now to knock on 10,000 doors. I've got like several months to do this. And I'm going to walk away with 500 sales, which will make me a tremendous success, right? It's a multiple. It's a percentage. And that's what job interviews are like. If you want a job and you figure your success is 5%, 1%, whatever, it's like, okay, I got to go to 100 interviews, or I got to go to 20 interviews, or I got to go to 5 interviews, whatever it is, and I'll have my job. And if I don't have it by then, it will be just very shortly longer, just slightly longer, and I will be employed. So that makes you feel confident because it's a predictable process, and you understand what's going on, and you don't feel like a lack of confidence. You don't feel this tall. In fact, you feel like, no, I'm a success, and I'm working the plan, and the plan is going according to plan. Okay, Carmiago says, nice to D you again, Bill. Yes, it's nice to D you, E you, and F you. No, I'm just kidding. It's nice to see you again, Carmiago. I remember you from earlier. Crichton says, how would you put your $100 MBA course on a resume, if at all? Well, you could just say, I've taken, an unaccredited MBA course. It's not meant to go on a resume. It's meant to have intrinsic value, right? If I was going to put on a resume, I suppose I would just say, like, I took this course from this person, and I read all the books, and I understand all the material, and I, can do this type of activity. That's part of my education. I took that training course. I wouldn't put it down as a degree or something. I'd put it down as like a training course, if that makes sense. Yeah, just incidentally, that's what really annoys me about a lot of education these days. Like, they're teaching this stuff. It's like taking a degree in math, right? What do you need to learn math? Well, you need the textbooks for the different types of math at the, whatever level you're at. And you need to learn the theory. And then you need to do all the problems and practice it over and over and over again, right? You could learn all that with a textbook and maybe an answer guide or something, with lots of problems and lots of answers to check your work. And then after that, you will know math, right? Now, that material has been out in the public domain for, depending on what type of math we're talking about, hundreds of years. Even the stuff you learn at, say, a bachelor level at university, that's been out in the public. Like, this was stuff that like Isaac Newton did, right? They were just sort of discovering calculus, with, it was like, who was it? It was Leibniz and Newton that, sort of created calculus. And this stuff is old. It's old. But these people are saying, we'll teach it to you in exchange for $50,000. It's like ridiculous. Really? You got, what exactly is the $50,000 going to? It's to have you read me the textbook? These textbooks that are like, that people are writing today that I could pay $50 and get, or the textbooks that people were writing 70 years ago and I could get for $5, or the textbooks that people are writing today, but it's a slightly older edition that's 5 years old that I could get for $5? Is that what you're charging me $50,000 for? That's just the beef I have with a lot of post-secondary education today. So that's why I created the MBA course, which is like, this material is out there. All the books that you use in these university programs that are written by professors that are at the top of their game, around the world, that have written the de facto book on like marketing or business strategy or whatever, that are used in places like Harvard. These are all available for a pittance. You can get them off Amazon, right? The only question is knowing what book to get and how it fits in with everything else and what's the importance of it. Like, where do you use this? So that's what I created my $100 MBA course for. That's what it is. It's like basically a reading list. And I give you videos that guide you through it, right? But the material is not created by me. You're learning from the true masters who, like, it's their learning that's being used in MBA programs the world over. You're learning all that for a tiny fraction of the price. And the added benefit is that you don't have to go and sit in classes and not do it on your own terms. You can do it on your own schedule. So if you work a day job and you're wanting to do this kind of just on the side, or maybe you're interested, but you're not so interested that you need to do a deep dive into it. You just want to get the gist of it, the basics. This allows you to do that. That's why I created it. Tuna says, yes, it was 4 months at the beginning, but my good feedback added 6 more months to my undergraduate internship. As I mentioned, I just can't understand why they spent 10 months on me. Well, internships, there's a couple of advantages to organizations that do internships. Sometimes, depending on the details, they may be compensated by the government. So the government is paying them if they will help give the local students from the local university some practical experience. That makes them more valuable to generate value and stimulate the economy in that region. So sometimes there's that arrangement. Other times, they do it because, first of all, they get the students working for free, essentially, or for very little amount of money. So that's cheaper than employing people. Instead of giving you money, they're giving you work experience. There's other things you can get from it too. You can use it to get letters of recommendation, to get referrals, to get references. When you're on the inside, you can use it to network within the industry that's in. Presumably that's important to you. That open up, bigger and better job opportunities elsewhere for you, right? Because you're approaching them and saying, hi, I'm an employee of this company. Could I talk to you? Could I get your expert opinion on where the industry is going and stuff like this, which is always the go-to thing you can say. And they'll talk to you, and once they see that you're awesome and you got great communication skills, you can contact them later and say like, hey, look, I really enjoyed hearing about your company and what you guys do and what you do and your thoughts on this and that. Listen, if ever you're looking for someone that can work as an engineer in this capacity, let me know, because what I heard makes me really interested to want to work for you guys. Something like that. And all of a sudden, bam, you jump to the top of the pile. When they hire someone new, they're going to look at you first, right? So there's all kinds of other advantages of doing internships that aren't explicitly stated, right? Rodolfo, disclosure, I'm 57 years old. It has taken me 25 years to overcome being an introvert. Please listen, analyze, and take in what is given to you on this video. Well, thank you for saying that, Rodolfo. That's nice to have that glowing endorsement. You are learning how to get better by watching a video for a few minutes. It took me 2 decades and a half on my own. Well, yes, I know exactly where you're coming from, Rodolfo, because I feel like I've done that too. I learned all this stuff the hard way. And I know a lot of people have too. Carmiego says, what is the use value of a cover letter? Do you recommend it? How should it be oriented? How to benefit from it? I'm starting to use them, but feel it could be a loss of time. Thank you, Bill. It's interesting, Carmiego, because now with AI and ChatGPT, cover letters are getting even weirder. Because most people now, as I am led to believe, don't even write their own cover letter. It's sort of half and half written by AI and kind of tweaked by the individual, Listen, Traditionally, cover letters were just simply to say, like if you opened an envelope that was addressed to you and out flops a resume, right? You wouldn't understand, like, okay, well, what? Who? Why are you sending me this? What's this for? So the cover letter was just to say, it's from me. I'm applying for this particular job that I saw in, this newspaper or whatever. And I'm sending you my resume because I hope you'll consider me for it. And the reason why I'm hoping you'll hire me is because, let me just summarize. I have this, and this, and I'm also very passionate about that. And I'm led to believe that that's what you're looking for. So here's my contact information. Please get back to me and either way, and I'm hoping you'll elect to bring me in for an interview. Thank you and have a great day. That was the cover letter. That's what its purpose was, right? To explain the resume or the job application. So the modern equivalent is that if you're applying for a job by, say, sending an email with some attachments, you attach your resume and maybe an application form or whatever else you might have on there. The cover letter would just be the body of the email that says, "Hi, I'm applying for this job. Please find my stuff attached. Here's why I'm interested. I hope you'll get back to me. Here's my information." That's really all it is. The problem is a lot of big organizations who, quite frankly, don't know what they're doing insist upon like these big fancy cover letters where you restate your entire resume and then you state all these very specific things that no one ever reads, right? So different employers might have different wants, wills, and needs for what you have in your cover letter. But basically, at its core, it's a very brief, simple document, right? So, that's the general answer, but depends on who you're applying to and if they've got their own requirements, they've said what they want in a cover letter. You basically have to dance to that. If you're going through standard channels, if you're going the networking route, which is what I would advise anyone to do, you don't have to jump through these kind of hoops. You don't have to worry about this stuff. Carmier goes, since there are so many candidates, maybe cover letters aren't really useful since HR maybe won't get to them. Yeah, they won't get to them, but it's precisely because there are a lot of candidates that they've made the cover letters so formal that they have all these requirements for them because they think it'll help narrow down, which candidates they should bring in. It's stupid. It kind of doesn't, right? Especially now that like most cover letters are AI generated. Hello, Bill. I often don't get respected in the workplace. Please, what do I need to do to get respected by colleagues and coworkers? Well, it's Pearl. Hey, Pearl. Listen, in the course of this live stream, which I'm going to have to wind down in a few minutes, I've talked about having good social skills. A lot of that, if you had to summarize what that actually is, it means being professional, being likable, being friendly, being approachable, being respectful. So if someone wants to talk to you, the answer is always sure. And you have like a nice smile on your face and you look pleasant and you look friendly and you try and be helpful to people. You try and be accommodating, even if in that moment you don't feel very friendly or accommodating, but you do it anyway. If you carry yourself like that, and that's how you interact with those around you, eventually, all things being equal, you will be respected. Okay? That's really, at the end of the day, what it boils down to. If you're willing to help someone, maybe you don't know everything, maybe you're not in like a position with a lot of authority, but at the end of the day, if you're helpful and you're accommodating, people will respect you for that, and they will want to interact with you. And then good things follow. Things like promotions and other opportunities, they follow, right? It's hard to be unapproachable, be socially awkward, be off-putting, be gruff, or borderline rude with people and then have a lot of great things happen afterwards. It's much more rare for that to occur. Pearl goes on, please, how do I get better in having conversations and discussions in the workplace? I tend to stutter or get caught unawares. Well, I feel like I covered a lot of that earlier in the stream, so I don't want to repeat it all, but suffice it to say that it's a two-step process. One is getting knowledge of like what you should do, and then step two is to practice, to apply it by having interactions with people where you try and apply those tips. Okay? You become aware of different principles, and then you become aware of like knowing this is then what we should do, and then you go out and you practice doing it. And two things happen when you practice. Number one, you get better at it, and number two, it becomes second nature. You don't have to think of like what to say or what to do. It's not forced. It becomes much more natural. You just naturally tend to do those things. And it's like conditioning over time, right? So, listen, I said some of the principles earlier in the stream. If you really want all of them together, okay, that's what I put into this course, because a big part of getting hired, a big resource that's untapped for a lot of introverts is what is known as the hidden job market. I mean, that's a whole other topic, but most people get hired through networking. More people get hired through networking than by applying to job postings and going to job interviews and talking to recruiters. Now, if you don't believe me on this is like a radical new thing that you're hearing. Don't take my word for it. Go out and verify this. Okay. Ask all the people around you. How did you get your job? How did you get your job? Ask all your friends. And what you're going to find is that they got their job through some form of networking, either by knowing someone or meeting someone. And that's what got them the job, not applying cold when they didn't know anybody. Okay. So I put all the principles of how to interact with people, how to do informational interviews and connect to CEOs and people like this that can help you, how to approach them, how to have a conversation with them, that, they end up loving you and they love to talk to you, and, you make a great first impression. I put all of that into this course. So if you're interested in learning that, it's all there with like for templates for like, sending people messages and things like that. If you're into that. Crichton says, how can I offer internships with my company to college students? Universities only want to work with big companies. Oh, that's a good one. Well, listen, I mean, I know that certainly where I am, you have the big universities, but you also have a sort of ecosystem of like increasingly smaller colleges, right? You might have like one or two big universities in your city or wherever you happen to be, or your region. You might then have a few bigger trade schools and community colleges and things like this. And then, especially nowadays, you get like smaller and smaller educational institutions. Some are quite small actually. And those institutions will have a person whose job it is to manage all their relationships with industry, like with employers and things like that. So whether that's internships or other things, right? That's the person you want to contact. You want to have a meeting with them, talk about, what their framework is for establishing internships and things. Or if it's too cumbersome, if there's some roadblocks to do it formally, is there something maybe perhaps less official you could do? You could have some kind of interaction together where, they don't officially have internships, but they allow you to post up employment opportunities or other things like, right in the college, and they'll advocate for you and they'll steer you to the, like there's all kinds of things you can do. You have to talk to them to really figure out how it works. There is also, now this is, so I know those people, I've had interaction with those people in my life, but what I don't know personally is in the government, they also have a department that sets those things up, that approves them all and all this. And you also want to find out who they are and interact with them because they can help open doors for you in that respect also. Okay. Like they might only want to work with big companies if you're doing sort of high volume type roles, but maybe there's a more specialist type role that you would do in low volume that it would make sense for them to set up possibly. So it's a matter of exploring all these different options with them. But the way I would do it is I wouldn't try to do this remotely. I would just try and get in the same room with them, try and get an informational interview, see if they'll grab a coffee with you or something, and you talk about this. Okay, I've got to wind this down very soon, so I'll take the last couple of questions. Pearl says, especially in meetings. Okay, yeah, that's a bit of an art in meetings. Depends on who you've got to deal with. But just learning communication skills. There's a branch of management called organizational theory or organizational behavior. I do cover it as part of this course. And what that does is it explains how people interact in organizations. Meetings are, a big part of that. And so it helps you understand what's really going on in meetings. Sometimes it's not super obvious. It's not taken at face value. Like, for example, how can a manager control the outcome of a committee decision, but yet not be present in the decision? Things like this. There's all kinds of tactics and tools that people use. So working within that and being tuned into some of the things that are going on are pretty important. Also, just having basic communication skills, knowing how to persuade someone is very important. And I teach a bit of that, but that's also covered in this, by the way, right? That's to do more with what to say rather than, just how to write. But I would learn 3 things. I would learn basic communication skills, like how to persuade. I would learn organizational theory, like if you really want to be tuned into what's going on in meetings. It answers a lot of questions that people struggle with, like, why are there so many meetings? We don't ever seem to be listened to. They say it's a roundtable discussion, but yet they don't seem to be interested in hearing anyone's opinion other than them. Why do they do that? Like all these kinds of issues. It explains all of that for you. So it's a pretty useful thing to know. And then the third thing would be like just how to, how to put into practice, how to speak and practice making arguments and practice presenting and things like that. Okay. Tuna says, everything happened as you said. My references from that 10 months of internship got me my current engineering job in a different company. I'm amazed by how experienced you are. Well, thank you. It's not really that hard. It's just having been around the farm a few times, you see how things work. I wish someone had sort of taken me under their wing from the beginning and like shown me all this. I would have shaved so many years off my journey, to get where I eventually ended up. But thank you. And Crichton says, thank you for all the great info, Bill. You're absolutely welcome, Crichton. Thank you for joining me today on How to Get Hired. I will be back next week, same time with another one of these live streams where the goal is ultimately to get you employed and get you prospering in your career. So thank you for joining me today. Thank you to the 24 people who are here now. You guys are awesome. Check out my courses if you want to improve in different areas, especially the Get Hired course. If you're wanting to, A, get hired quicker, B, wanting to discover much more and better job opportunities than what are posted, or C, wanting to brush up on your social skills, interpersonal skills, communication skills, check out that course. That'll do all 3 for you. Thank you very much. See you next week. Take care.